So yeah, in the class of 580 students, almost 600, I finished as the top student out of all of them. And just sitting in the lecture hall the other day, seeing all the heads there, I was filled with so much gratitude and ironically humbled to know that I did that. And getting straight to the point, and this one's going to surprise you. I'm not going to be one of those guys that tells you that I did it because I studied the whole day, anything like that. Far from it. But I'm going to tell you what I did do so you get a fresh perspective, because I often saw, like in my high school days, that there's this toxic culture online of saying you must study the whole day. That's far from the truth, at least in my case. So for some context, I studied an actuarial sciences degree before this. I'm now doing accounting sciences. And in actuarial sciences, I studied quite literally the whole day. On average, 15 or 16 hours a day. And I performed decently. Not great, but decently. But I was most of the time had this like brain fog. I was very like depressed, quite literally. And I knew I wasn't performing to my max. Like my brain's processing speed, all of that was much lower. Now in accounting sciences, fair enough, it is a slightly simpler degree, or a degree that suits me a bit better. But even with that, I've probably been studying 2 or 3 hours a day at most. And it came down to me having other things in my life on one hand, but also identifying more efficient and effective ways of studying. So a quick touch on having other things going on in your life, and I think that's actually the more important of the two in all honesty. But you don't want to be in this work mindset all the time, because then your brain just gets tired of being in that zone, and then you don't really actually see a difference between like your day-to-day life and studying. You have no separation of identity. And for me at least, that was very toxic. Instead, you want to be in a phase where you have spent some time with your friends. I spent a lot of time with my woman. I spent a lot of time sorting out this YouTube channel, but I also spent a lot of time doing surveys, freelancing, doing other stuff. It's still productive, but it's another form of productivity that isn't just one way working on the university. For me, that really wasn't a good way to go about things. In terms of the more efficient study methods, in terms of maths, straightforward, I've always said this, do as many past papers as possible. Maths is a simple matter of practicing. When it comes to the more theoretical subjects though, use this app called Anki. But nobody really tells you how to use Anki. And frankly, I think I use it differently to most people. So let me touch on quickly how I use it, and then you can play around with it for yourself. Actually, put a download link down below as well. I'm not affiliated to them, not affiliated to anyone yet. I'm still a small YouTuber. But essentially, how you can use Anki is get your PDF or the ebook of your textbooks as far as possible. Then what you do is, what you would normally highlight on like a piece of paper, the good old days when you used to highlight, you actually just copy paste it into Anki. Don't you'll see it has like front and back. Front is meant to be the question, back is meant to be the answer. Don't do that whole thing. Leave the back empty, and the front, just put down that sentence you would normally highlight. Put in that flashcard deck, and then every now and then when you feel like it, or even in my case, most of the time, I would do it like a week before tests and exams. Go through that flashcards you made throughout the semester, and then learn it. You'll see that in itself will probably get you like 70 to 80%. After that, practice it through past papers, and if you identify gaps, go back to the flashcards. But if you do the flashcards 2 or 3 rounds, honestly, I would say you've done it. Each round, at least in my experience, takes about like 2 or 3 hours per subject. So that's like 9 hours of using the flashcards, and then after just jump into past papers. I do think past papers needs to be prioritized more. That's the way I've always learned, and you might have seen recently I posted a video on how I got not top for everything, but top marks for IGCSEs and A levels. If you watch that, you'll also see there I speak a lot about past papers. And the thing about past papers is, at university you don't always get them. But then they also have, at least the universities I've been to now, tutorial packs. Tutorial packs can cover up for the past papers. You can also use the textbook questions, but personally I wouldn't recommend that nearly as much as past paper questions, for the simple fact that textbooks aren't really course specific, at least not most of the time. If it's a course specific textbooks, do those questions, but if it's not, honestly look for past papers or set your own questions using the textbook or the lecture notes or whatever you deem to be the most relevant material to you. Beyond that, honestly, don't put pressure on yourself. I have to be honest with you. I had this goal at the start of last year to be top of my class. Can't deny it. I'm a very ambitious person, so I think having that constant goal in mind is going to obviously push you towards the goal. That's just not like natural how psychology and all of that works. But you mustn't get into this toxic space of saying, oh, if I don't get out, I'm a failure. For me, it was a simple thing of also realizing that tests aren't always an accurate way of testing your intelligence or your knowledge. So one question, another candidate might be better at answering than you, and vice versa. So at the end of it all, it could come down to you beating them or them beating you by 0.1%. And that 0.1% can be attributed to that one singular question. So if you understand where I'm coming from now, there is a bit of luck involved. I recognize that. So bear that in mind and don't be too hard on yourself if you don't make it. Honestly, for the most part, set a goal of your mark rather than your position. So what I mean by that is my personal goal was to get 90%. I fell a bit short of the goal. But having the goal of 90%, then it doesn't really matter what goes on around you. If you get 90, someone gets 91, applaud them. They've done pretty well. But you can then actually have a proper way of assessing your progress. You can't be using someone else to assess your progress. I went on a lot of topics here. Let me know down below in the comments if you want to hear a bit more or join my Discord server or whatever the case is. But that said, I'll see you in the next one to become a better man.